Hi, guys. Hello. Glad everybody came, especially all the people that didn't know there was something happening until literally 4 hours ago. That's my favorite.
Hi.
I'm Mariah, in case you didn't know, I work here at Weave. I run this meetup. I founded this meetup. I think it's the best meetup, but I'm biased. I think it'd be really cool. Just go around. Let's go ahead, introduce ourselves, say our names, what we do, and then something completely random about yourself. I'll start. My name is Mariah. I work at Weave as a machine learning engineer. That's what I'm calling myself now, even though Troy knows we don't do any machine learning.
One little thing.
One little thing. And if you want to know something completely random about me, I am currently obsessed with Star Wars puzzles. I buy all of the Star Wars puzzles and do them because I can. Go ahead,
Hey,
Olivia.
Olivia Clyde. Come from a finance background. I worked at IM Flash for 8 years. Taking a break to give myself a chance to see if I can learn to code and transition to a developer role. Something weird about me?
Just something unique.
My current obsession is dark side and bright side Skittles. I don't know if you've seen them in the store.
Those are good.
So if you see a bag of dark side Skittles or bright side Skittles, we'll put that.
All right. Look out for it.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay, you're next, Tatum.
Hey, I'm Tatum. I am currently a machine learning intern at Avanti until Friday, and so looking for a full-time position now. Something interesting about me, I 3D print way too much.
Me too.
And Avanti has a 3D printer, and I somehow became the go-to 3D printing person. And so, yeah, there are people that are sad that I'm going to be leaving Avanti because they want me to help them print.
I'll have a question for you after. Well, I have a 3D printer at home, and I got this new gold plastic, and it's not working. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I suggest this stuff.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The 3D printing separate.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Me?
Oh, sorry, Troy. Troy was already talking.
Yeah. I'm Troy. I'm a developer here at Weave. I'm going to stick on the snack thread. I recently tried the peanut butter lovers Reese's. Way good. But I don't think they're selling them anymore. So.
Okay, so how is peanut butter livers different than regular?
Well, it has like a peanut butter top instead of chocolate on top.
But is chocolate still on the outside?
On the sides. And
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Very good. So.
Like an extra layer of peanut
So
butter.
it's like a peanut butter
Discontinued
pie,
snack.
Yeah, peanut butter
basically.
pie. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to talk about a snack.
Oh, I was
It's just
prepared for
made
snacks.
Yeah.
I'm Max. I work at Pluralsight as a software developer. I don't have any snack random things, but I am colorblind, which is a random thing about me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably sucks for you.
Oh, it's not bad.
You don't meet a lot of color. I feel like you don't meet as many colorblind people as exist.
Do you have issues with like VR, being colorblind?
I haven't played around with it that much, but I don't think I've had any
We have some upstairs. We can test it out later.
Hi, my name is Albert. I go to Dev Mountain, which is a boot camp down the road. And random go-to fact is that I'm left-handed. So there we go. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Trevor. I'm also a student at Dev Mountain. And a random fact about me is I really like mountain biking.
Have you had any gnarly injuries? I feel like if I would mountain bike, I would flip off the bike every time I did anything.
I dislocated 12 fingers in one day.
Hey, how do you dislocate 12 of them if there are only 10?
Because when I got down to the bottom, they would just pop them back in, then I hopped on the lift back up.
So did you dislocate all 10 or just
The same one 12 times?
I think it was all of them on my right hand, like 1 or 2 on my left.
Okay,
Oh, gosh.
I mean, sorry, guys. I'm disgusting.
My name's Leah. I'm a developer also from Dev Mountain. And a random fact about me is I have a cool yellow duck umbrella in my car.
You never know when you need an umbrella.
I'm Sarah. I'm a developer at Volt. And let's see. So I lived in Japan for 5 years, and I worked as a translator before I became a developer.
From Japanese or like
English, yeah.
Okay, I was like, how many other languages do you speak? Okay, we'll jump over there to Eric, whose name I will remember maybe.
My name's Eric. I'm also a student at Dev Mountain. Random fact about me is I read all Harry Potter books.
Good
In a
series.
single sitting?
Two sittings.
So you'd have to take a bathroom break at some point.
By all Harry Potter books, you mean like all of them, including the small ones that like, okay.
Sorcerer's
Hey.
Stone. all of it.
See, at first it doesn't sound like a big deal, but then you think about all the small books J.K. Rowling has written.
Spin-offs, yeah.
Yeah.
Kylie, you can speak.
I'm going to introduce myself in a minute. I'm Kylie. I work here, and a fun fact, I'm speaking tonight.
Whoa, so random.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right?
We gotta do the whole family.
This is my family. If they want-
I'm Kathy. I'm Kylie's mom, visiting from Seattle. And she stole my random fact because I used to live in Japan as well
Oh.
and love it there. It's my favorite place.
Did you also work as a translator?
No, I did not.
Child.
I'm Emerson, I'm Kylie's sister, and I don't have a job, but I basically
She came here once.
and I'm a ballet dancer. My name's Addie, I'm also Kylie's sister, and one fact is I do ballet for the company at BYU.
That's impressive. Kind of intimidating.
I'm Caden, also Kylie's brother.
Also my sister.
And I work in construction, and I also really like mountain bikes.
I bet you have some gnarly stories too in construction. Probably not as many dislocated fingers though.
No dislocated fingers, luckily. So.
Yet.
Cool. Well, I'm glad everybody could come. I hope more people come. I'm trying to experiment with this slightly earlier time just because I hate waiting. But if everybody hates it, I'll go back to 6:15 because whatever people like, I don't care.
I'm just glad I got a notification for it beforehand because I was expecting to come at 6, and then I get this message going, it's starting in 30 minutes. Oh,
Anyway, so if people keep trickling in, that's fine. I don't care. Just a reminder, we do have a Slack. We want everybody to join. That link will give you the invite. That's where we put our announcements, talk about cool things. We do have a Women in Tech channel that the only thing that posts on there right now is my Twitter bot. So it'd be really sad if that's the only thing that ever posts there and I'm the only one that sees it. Also, follow us on Twitter. And I don't have anything else to say, so Kylie, it's all you. Let's give Kylie some claps.
Sorry, I'll just.
Nice background, that's sweet. Looks like it's in your other,
Over there.
yeah.
We were having trouble getting this set up over there. There we go. Okay, so like I said, I'm Kiely Clemens. And I'm going to talk to you guys about technical interviews and just like how to approach them. It's something I'm super passionate about, so I'm really excited to share some advice and do a few practice problems. So to introduce myself a little bit, that's me and my husband Max, who's here. We live in South Jordan with our 2 adorable dogs, who enjoy when I work from home. So technical interviews are just like a super weird thing. A lot of people say that like a regular like behavioral interview is kind of like a date, right? Like you're getting to know someone to see if you want to like start something long-term with them. And if that's true, then technical interviews are what it would be like if you showed up to your date and the person that you're going on a date with says, I think I might want to marry you, even though we just met. But before I decide, I just want you to complete these 3 tasks. And those tasks are to make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, fix the transmission on my car, and eat these hot wings in under 5 minutes. You're like, that's really weird. Like, how are these going to help you determine if you should marry me? Because like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, anyone can make one, right? It's super easy. The transmission on the car, like unless you're a pro mechanic, it's like impossible, right? And eating the hot wings, like what does that even have to do with anything? So it's kind of a like weird analogy, but I feel like this is how technical interviews can be sometimes. It can seem like the tasks that you're given are either like really easy that anyone could solve them, or so hard that you don't feel like you're going to come up with a good solution in the time you have, or just totally unrelated to the job that you're applying for. But when you really get into it, it's not so much about whether you can complete the tasks or get the right answer, but more about how you approach them. So with this example, like maybe it's not about whether you can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but how do you approach the task? Like, do you put the peanut butter on one bread and the jelly on the other? Or do you put them on the same slice of bread? Or do you get really creative and add like marshmallows to it or toast the bread? How are you gonna approach this? With the car transmission, maybe it's about whether you get the task and say, I can't do that, I give up immediately. Or do you ask more questions like, can I ask for help from a mechanic? Can I use my phone and look stuff up? Or with the last thing, maybe they just want to know how you work under a time constraint. So that's kind of what I want to talk about with technical interviews, how to like delve into it deeper than just getting the right answer and what your interviewer might be looking for besides just a solution. So I'm not an expert, before I get into this, I'm not an expert at technical interviews, but I have done some and I've given some. But I'm curious, like how many of you have done one before, a technical interview? About half. Does anyone like have anything they want to share about it before we get into advice? Yeah.
Okay, so this is my reasoning for coming here is that I need to get better at them, but I also am passionately like, I tell every recruiter I meet that I hate whiteboard interviews and I give my reasoning because I don't think they're done well. So that's been my experience, that sometimes as someone interviewing, like you have to recognize that just because you might not do well at the interview doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad candidate. It sometimes means that the person interviewing you is just not interviewing well, because there's a certain level of, if you are trying to do a whiteboard interview and your interviewer is a brick wall when you're talking to them, or saying, oh, you can't do it that way, or I think that all software developers should know this, or that's a stupid question, that's not good interviewing anyway. So being able to know the balance of them, I think whiteboard interviews can be done well and can mean good things, but oftentimes they're done poorly.
I totally agree. I feel like a lot of the time it doesn't actually feel like it's going to be anything like that in your job, or at least you hope not, right? Because yeah, when are you going to be coding with someone standing over your shoulder saying like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way if I were you, like every 2 minutes. So does anyone else want to say anything? All right, I'll just get into some advice that I have. This is just what I've learned from the interviews I've participated in. So first of all, just figure out what your strengths are and then show that in your technical interview. Yes, like a lot of times the primary focus is like a way to show off your knowledge and technical skills, but you can highlight like any other strengths that you have like through the process of that. So like, for example, if you feel like you're really detail oriented, then show that, like ask a ton of questions and show that you really get into the details of the code. If you feel like you're like a very open-minded person, then like give the interviewer a chance to critique you at the end and be open to the advice you give or that they give. If you're super passionate about programming, then you can show that you're able to have fun while working on the problem. So like no matter what your strengths are that you want to show, there's going to be a way to show that in your technical interview. The second thing is to ask tons of questions before you start. Even if the question isn't like a trick question, which sometimes it is, it's really important to just make sure that you understand the task that they have for you before you start on it. Because it would be really embarrassing to come up with like a good answer to the wrong question. The third thing is to talk out loud the whole time that you're working. For me, like it helps, like it just helps me to be able to like talk through what I'm doing to like keep moving forward on the problem. But on top of that, it also lets the interviewer see how you're thinking. That way, even if you don't come up with the right answer or you come up with something wrong, they can understand how you got there, or maybe even like stop you before you get too far off the wrong path. The fourth thing is to be on the lookout for anything that the interviewer might want to like critique you on at the end, and point it out yourself if you can. So like, for example, if your code isn't very efficient, like you didn't find the most efficient way to solve it, you could say something like that, like, this might work, but if the input's really large, it's gonna be slow. Like if I had more time, I would solve it this way. That would be more efficient. And then lastly, you're not really done when you give like the right answer, because a lot of times as a follow-up, the interviewer will ask why you did things a certain way, or how you might change the code under different circumstances, or how you test your solution. So I think it's kind of a balance between being confident in the solution you came up, but also like moldable enough that you're willing to say like, yeah, that wasn't the best, or I would maybe try it the way that the interviewer suggests. So now I just want to do like a practice problem with everybody. So I'm going to put it up, and I think it would be good if we could get into small groups. So maybe like no more than 3 or 4, and we could probably do like 3 groups. And if like one person could have a computer, that would be good. So I'm just gonna like put the problem up on the board, and then I'll give you a chance to ask some clarifying questions before you get into it, and then let you guys just discuss, come up with like a pseudocode solution, and then if you have time to get into it.
Let's do it. She said 3 to 4.
Deal for Microsoft and Google, and because of that, it's going to be a big deal for a lot of other companies, because that's how it goes. They follow the trends. It's also why we have this problem. So you're in charge of organizing a music festival. I'm sorry, this is coming up on the board.
You can do it over here.
Drag it, right? No, it's not on my screen.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's gonna work. Okay, so there's a certain number of bands that are interested in playing, and you have some number of stages at your venue. If you're given the time that the bands are gonna arrive and how long their sets are, you need to determine whether or not you can book all the bands in that festival. So, for example, the input would be the number of stages that you have is the first integer, and then the second thing is gonna be an array of integers that represent the times that the bands are gonna show up. And that's just gonna be like 1 through 24, or sorry, 0 through 23. And it will always be an integer. And then the third thing will be the length of the set as like an hour in an integer. And then you're gonna output true or false depending on whether or not all of the bands can play. Do you guys wanna ask any questions about it to clarify?
Is that little 1 in the first example input, is that a typo?
Oh, yeah, that's a typo. That's never gonna happen. Sorry.
There's a 1.
It's outside of the array.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just ignore that.
The example inputs, you have 2 different sections?
There's gonna be 3 lines separated by new lines, and as far as so down here I show like, this is the function that you would write, and so it's already gonna come in as 3 different things passed into your function, so don't worry about reading in the input.
Does a band have to start on the hour that they arrive?
Yes.
Okay.
So that time is going to be their start time. Any other questions?
How do you want us to conduct the small groups?
I was just thinking that you could just start discussing a solution together and one person could type up like a pseudocode solution to start. And then if you have time or like want to, then you can start writing it and go. But probably just have like one leader on a computer and then everyone else doing ideas, like as if you're doing a group coding session.
Is there a end time for the festival, meaning a time that a band could not go past?
It's just one day long, so we're going from 0, which will be midnight, to 23, which is 11. And a band can start at 11 and go for 1 hour, so it's like exactly 24 hours.
So you could start at 11, go for 1 hour, but you can't start at 11 and go for 2 hours.
No, but I mean 23.
Right, 11 o'clock, 23 at night, yeah.
You'll never be able to go.
So 7 to 10, is that like they started at 7 and ended at 10, or what's 7 to 10?
Yeah, so those explanations are just, those aren't like how you have to solve it, but that's just showing like what it would mean for this input. So yeah, in theory, like from 7 to 10, that band is going to be.
Okay.
It's not
Could you explain at least one of the inputs again? I think I missed the beginning of telling us what the input was.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing, so if you look at this function signature, you're going to get stage count, which will be the number of stages, and then you'll get 2 arrays of integers. The first one is the time that the bands will arrive and start playing, and the second is the length of their set.
Okay, perfect. I should have looked at the function a second.
Let's just start, and then if any other questions come up, you can raise your hand and I'll come over and talk to you.
is my
I
absolute.
think we're gonna wrap up in a second.
busy
Just like finish the thought you're on, and it's okay if you don't have like a full solution or anything yet.
That was the hour. Then
All the way, just go straight forward and to the right. It's like in the lawn.
see whether one of the
Anybody like want to get up and share what they have so far? Anybody?
We need a whiteboard.
Yeah,
We
there's
have
a whiteboard right there.
No eraser. Yeah, you can either do whiteboard.
No
or
eraser.
You just want to talk about it, that's fine. No one wants to, it's awful.
Why don't we talk about, why don't just each group talk about their solution, just a little bit, like just their general approach?
Sure. It doesn't have to be like anything super detailed, but just like how you decided to solve it. Let's start with this group. Or do you want to wait for your other group?
Sure, okay. I'm not sure if I came up with the same thing that he did, and I don't think it's efficient in any way whatsoever, but I thought of the stage as buckets. And if you initialize starting time and then have like, I don't know, for example, the first one starts at 18. Then you would initialize an array that says 18, 19, 20, and then plop it into the first bucket. You might want it sorted, but you can basically play it like Mancala almost, and then just plop it down from each one, and then if it doesn't add up being true, then it's false. So I don't know.
I think that's pretty similar to the solution that other people came up with. And just like a disclaimer, like everyone kind of like, I heard people talking and it sounded like everyone had like a pretty different solution, and that's totally fine. Like, that's why I picked this question. Because I feel like it's like really open to doing it in one different ways, and there's not necessarily wrong.
So we ran through a couple of different solutions, and then we ended up deciding that we would try to go for the most human readable solution, which in our eyes was having an array that was the number of stages that we had. So an integer array, and then that array would be initialized as like for the first problem 0, 0, 0, 0. And then we would go through each hour, so 1 through 24. And if one of the stages was being used, then we would put the time of how long it's going to be used in that array and decrement it each time we go through an hour. And you would know if all of them were being used if each of them had a number greater than 0 on them. It's not good for complexity, but
It's a good starting
it
point.
works.
Yeah.
It would work. Yeah, what about your-
So we kind of went on a rabbit hole with like going into a map solution first. And when we started to think about it and talk it out, kind of realized, yeah, this might not be the best thing. And so we also switched to a multi-dimensional array where we have like a tuple of the set. So inside of basically each set of stages. And so we would check each position based on the number of stages that we have at each different set time. And so when we're looping through our values at the top for each band, we would link if there is a set of values at those times, and then come back and say, there is a booking here, there isn't, and then the program stops if there's ever an overlap that can't be solved.
Awesome. Cool. Everyone had a different solution. And I like, you brought up a good point about like, it's okay to start going one way and then to be like, oh wait, that's actually not the best way to do it. Let's go this way. Because I think that definitely shows a lot about your willingness to be adaptable, change your solution as you go. What did you guys like, did anything come up that you feel like you learned about solving these types of problems, or like challenges that you faced while you were working on it?
Something that was helpful for us was just drawing it out. If I was going to do this by hand, how would I visualize it? And that kind of helped lead us towards the solutions we ended up coming up with.
Kind of visualizing it how you would just do it in your head.
One thing that helped me is to realize that we don't actually care what stage bands are put on. We just want to know, like the only thing we need to know is, are we overbooked or not? And so we don't necessarily have to like write out this thing that's going to schedule stages. We just need to keep track of how many stages are booked. That helped me a bit.
That's a super good point, because I do feel like sometimes it's easy to get lost in like the word problem when it doesn't actually matter as much. I heard someone saying, like, while you guys were working on it, like saying something about looking at the test cases and working through those first, and I really like that idea. It's something that I do too. Does anyone else have any comments about what happened? All right, well, I have another practice problem, but I feel like we took a long time on this one, and the other one wasn't as good, so.
You could share it.
Yeah, you could put this on the Slack and then decide.
Oh my goodness, that's why we have the Slack.
Finally makes sense. Yeah, so the other problem, like this one's more concrete, right? Like there's a right or a wrong answer. If you ran test cases on it, you could see. The other problem was a more open-ended one where you would just sort of ask questions, work through it, and just come up with something, and it's not necessarily right or wrong. So I'll send that to Mariah to post in case anyone wants to take a look at it.
Riley could join the Slack.
Yeah, or you could invite me to your secret Slack channel.
It's not secret. Put up a link, anyone could join.
That's all I had. Does anyone kind of ask us if anyone has any other questions or comments? Now would be the time to share it. Otherwise, we'll just wrap it up.
Whenever people are interviewing, I always just tell people that it's okay if you get rejected. It doesn't mean you're an idiot. There's like 100,000 reasons that you might not have gotten that job, and it's okay to get rejected.
I've gotten rejected other times.
What's the best way to prepare? Just like do a bunch of these or do like mock interviews?
Mock interviews is a good one.
Yeah, I mean, if you have someone who can like do them with you, I feel like that would be awesome because it's like a lot more like the real thing. But for me, I just go on HackerRank. There's tons of algorithm problems on there, and I just solve them.
On what?
HackerRank.com.
How come I've never heard of that?
I don't like HackerRank.
Well, there's other sites like HackerRank too. If you have something else,
It's like kind of like just has a bunch of questions.
yeah,
like
it just has a lot of like
has an
algorithm
IDE in the
problems.
website.
Some people actually use it for their interviews, and I have found that for me at least, getting through the HackerRank problems and the amount of time they give you is hell.
Like to do it as like an actual interview. I've never had that before.
Another resource is a book called Cracking the Coding Interview. It has a lot of problems like this, and it kind of walks you through some of the tips and tricks as well of working on the whiteboard and stuff like that.
I like those because sometimes they'll show you like the easiest brute force answer and then like a harder one, like if you wanted to go more advanced.
Yeah.
I would definitely practice at a whiteboard though, at least a few times, because it's way different than using on paper or on a computer. So
It is a little scarier to be standing up and talking in front of somebody on a whiteboard.
My handwriting's so bad that I'm just like really embarrassed.
The point of having it on a whiteboard is to kind of judge your presentation skills too. Because you could easily conduct these interviews just sitting down and doing the stuff on a piece of paper. Like,
I mean, I've had some where you're on a computer and it's just being displayed and you're typing it too, so
yeah.
it depends on the company and the interviewer.
And some companies do pair programming interviews as well, where you are programming and you have someone else behind you talking about the problem. And pair programming is a good place to say, hey, I don't know this syntax very well, or asking questions like
Has
that.
anyone besides me done one of those paired programming technically? I love those.
They're really great.
I think they're better than whiteboarding, and we should quit doing whiteboarding.
I mean, we don't really do.
No, we
Like
don't do
one just
official
saw.
whiteboarding.
Okay, well, that's all I have for you guys. Feel free to keep discussing tips and stuff. I'm sure a lot of people have really good insight.